Welcome to Infidelity Truths. Before we dive into today's gripping story, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more thrilling stories just for you. Let's begin.
I stood in the middle of my new apartment, a cozy one-bedroom in a quiet part of town, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the faint smell of fresh paint. The place was a blank slate, a fresh start after months of chaos. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, cutting through the silence. I glanced at the screen. An unfamiliar number. Thinking it might be the internet technician I'd been hounding for days, I answered. "Hello. Is this Ava Thompson?" The voice was sharp, professional, unfamiliar. "Yes," I said, cautious. "Who's this?" "David Clean, attorney for Mr. Eric Whitaker. I need to discuss your divorce settlement." My heart stopped. Eric. The name alone was a punch to the gut. 2 months ago, I'd walked out of a courthouse, divorce papers signed, vowing never to look back. We'd been married for 7 years, and I thought I'd left him, and the pain he caused in the past. Hearing his name now twisted my stomach into knots. "I thought everything was finalized," I said, my voice barely steady. "That's what we need to talk about," Clean replied, his tone clipped. "There are inconsistencies in the asset disclosures Eric submitted. We've also been contacted by Camila Rivera's attorney. She's filed a paternity suit." I froze. "A paternity suit?" "Yes. She claims Eric fathered her child during the period you were still legally married." The room spun. A child? Eric, the man who'd spent years dodging my questions about starting a family, had gotten another woman pregnant while we were married? My knees buckled, and I sank onto a nearby box, clutching the phone. "We're reviewing everything," Clean continued. "I'd advise you to take a second look at your settlement. You may have unknowingly forfeited significant entitlements." Entitlements? The word almost made me laugh. I hadn't cared about the money when I signed those papers. I just wanted out, away from Eric's lies, his cold detachment, his ability to make me feel small. But now it seemed, the rabbit hole went deeper than I'd imagined. Let me take you back to the beginning. Eric and I met in our late 20s, both ambitious, both chasing dreams in a city that never sleeps. He was in finance, a rising star at a prestigious firm, with a smile that could charm anyone. I was a graphic designer, freelancing while building a portfolio. Our early years were electric, late-night talks, weekend getaways, plans for a future we both swore we'd build together. From the outside, we were perfect. The power couple with a sleek downtown condo, matching Instagram posts from tropical vacations, and wide smiles that hid the cracks forming beneath. But behind closed doors, Eric was a different man. Charming, yes, but calculated. He never yelled, never raised a hand, but he had a way of cutting me down with a single look, a dismissive sigh, a perfectly timed silence. Emotional manipulation was his art form, and I was his unwilling canvas. He'd make me feel irrational for asking simple questions, like why he was late again or why his phone was suddenly password protected. "You're being paranoid, Ava," he'd say, his voice dripping with pity. As if I were a child imagining monsters, I convinced myself it was stress. His job was demanding, late nights, business trips, client emergencies with vague explanations. I told myself we were just in a rough patch, that love meant weathering storms. That is, until I found the receipt.it was tucked in the pocket of his dry clean suit, a crumpled piece of paper from a hotel in Miami. A suite, booked for a weekend. He told me he was in Boston for a client meeting. I confronted him that night, holding the receipt like it was a grenade. He barely blinked. "You're overreacting," he said, leaning back in his chair, sipping his whiskey. "It's just a mix-up. You know how these things are." But it wasn't just the receipt. It was the faint trace of unfamiliar perfume on his collar, the way he flinched when I tried to touch him, the late-night texts he'd dismiss as work. A week later, I hired a private investigator. I didn't want to believe it, but I needed the truth. The PI's report shattered me. Eric had been seeing someone named Camila Rivera for nearly a year. She was younger, a marketing consultant with a polished LinkedIn profile, and a smile that mirrored the one I used to have. The PI had photos, Eric and Camila at a rooftop bar, his hand on her lower back. Camila at a company event, introduced as his girlfriend. His girlfriend, while I was still his wife. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. He just sighed as if I'd inconvenienced him. "Let's not drag this out, Ava," he said. "We both know this hasn't been working for a while." That was it. No fight, no remorse. He seemed relieved, and that hurt more than the betrayal itself. I filed for divorce the next week, determined to walk away clean. No alimony, no assets, just freedom. I didn't want anything tying me to him. The day I signed the papers, I felt lighter, like I'd shed a skin that no longer fit. I promised myself I'd never let someone like Eric break me again. But now, 2 months later, his lawyer's call dragged me back into the mess. After Clean's bombshell about the paternity suit, he emailed me a stack of documents, Eric's financial disclosures from the divorce, now flagged with discrepancies. I poured a glass of red wine and opened my laptop, steeling myself. The files revealed a web of lies. Offshore accounts, stock options, shell companies, even a property in Aspen titled under Camila's name but purchased by Eric 3 months before our divorce. He hadn't just cheated. He'd built a parallel life, one where I was erased long before I walked away. The next morning I called a new attorney, Rachel Voss, a woman with a reputation for dismantling men like Eric in court. She reviewed the documents and didn't sugarcoat it. "He committed fraud," she said, her voice steady. "He hid assets, lied on sworn disclosures. You have a case, Ava, a strong one. But it won't be easy. He's got powerful friends and he'll fight dirty." I spent days wrestling with the decision. Did I want to drag myself back into Eric's orbit? The legal battle would be brutal, and I'd worked so hard to find peace. But this wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. About the woman I was before Eric, the one who trusted too easily, who cried alone while he texted Camila, "I miss you." I deserved better. So, I filed the motion. That's when the chaos erupted. Camila's paternity suit hit the tabloids first. Finance mogul's secret love child screamed the headlines, complete with grainy photos of Camila, her baby bump barely visible. Eric released a statement through his PR team, calling it a private matter and asking for respect during this complex time. But the truth was a wildfire, and it spread fast. Social media exploded with speculation, and then came the second bombshell. Eric had been seeing another woman, a co-worker named Lauren, who had no idea about Camila or me. Lauren went public on X, posting a scathing thread about Eric's lies, complete with screenshots of their texts. He told her he was divorced. He told Camila I was just a roommate. The man had juggled 3 lives, and now they were all collapsing. Eric's carefully curated image began to crack. His firm suspended him pending an investigation into financial irregularities tied to the shell companies he'd used to hide assets. Clients pulled their accounts. His powerful friends distanced themselves. I stayed quiet, letting the storm rage around him. My lawyer, Rachel, was relentless, uncovering more evidence of his deception. Forged signatures, backdated transactions, even a second property in Miami I hadn't known about. In court, Rachel laid it all bare. Eric sat across the room, avoiding my gaze, his once confident posture replaced by a hollow slump. The judge was merciless, calling Eric's actions a deliberate and egregious violation of trust. I was awarded a revised settlement, triple what I'd originally walked away with, plus compensation for emotional damages. But the real victory wasn't the money. It was seeing Eric, the man who thought he was untouchable, lose the one thing he valued most: control. Camila faded from the spotlight after the birth of her son. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Eric had no interest in being a father, which didn't surprise me. Lauren, the coworker, moved to another city, starting fresh. As for me, I used part of the settlement to buy a small house with a garden, a place that felt like mine. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since the early days of our marriage. Each brushstroke felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The worst part wasn't the cheating or the lies. It was how Eric made me doubt my own reality, how he convinced me I was the problem. But standing in my new home, surrounded by half-finished canvases and the quiet hum of a life I was building on my own terms, I realized something. I wasn't the broken one. He was. And so, when his lawyer called that day, I thought it was the end. But it was just the beginning of my story, my strength, and a future I'd fight for, no matter what came next.